And now it's my pleasure to introduce Ginger Martin. Ginger's the president and chief executive officer of American National Bank, really one of the solid rocks of Fort Lauderdale. I mean, they're here for all the local businesses. They're proud to be one of the few locally owned community banks in Broward County, serving South Florida since 1985. Ginger Martin has been with the bank 20 of those years. Ginger is a member of the Executives Association of Fort Lauderdale and has served on our board of directors. She's been a leader within our organization and an extraordinary leader within our community. She, along with American National Bank, has received numerous awards for their financial performance and their community involvement. Ms. Martin's passion for fighting against human trafficking has led her on a mountain climbing journey with the Freedom Challenge since 2014. With multiple climbs under her belt thus far, including a noteworthy climb of Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa in 2015, Ms. Martin has tirelessly raised funds and awareness for the women and children who are victims of human trafficking. Ms. Martin earned an MBA from Florida Atlantic University, a BBA in accounting from the University of Louisiana as a magna cum laude graduate, and is a certified public accountant. Ms. Martin is a graduate of Leadership Broward and Life Work Leadership. She is a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach. It doesn't get any better than Ginger. I mean, like Connie said, if you don't get energized after this, go back to the room. Please join me in welcoming Ginger Martin.
Thank you, Dennis. Oh, gosh. Well, good morning, everyone, and it's so exciting to be here and to be with other, business leaders and people that across the country that are really making a difference in their community and also just giving and adding back. I'm really excited to share a story with you about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, but before I do that, I want you to pause for a second and in your mind reflect on your business, or if you're an executive director of another execs association, your organization, and I just want you to think about what's going on in your life, your business. Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Do you ever feel stressed? Do you ever have some doubts? Ever have challenges with some of your employees? Or what about your customers? Are you working on changing your business model or saying, how can I grow? How can I be more profitable? Maybe you're looking for, finance for your business. Chances are there is something going on in your business or personal life or organizational life that might feel like climbing a mountain. And so those are some of the things that I actually felt when I was preparing, training, and actually climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. This was my first view of Mount Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, Africa. And I have to tell you, when I saw this, I got weak in the knees. I was like, what have I done? What have I agreed to? So you talk about be scared. You talk about have some doubts. Talk about feeling like over my head. I mean, I looked at that and I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to accomplish, this? Well, I had 19 other people that were joining me on this journey, which just really emphasizes the whole importance of teams. And I'm going to tell you really about 3 different types of teams that helped me get up this mountain. The picture you see right here are the other 19 people that joined me in this fight against human trafficking. We were doing this for a cause, as Dennis shared with you. A couple of statistics, human trafficking, 30 million people globally. It is a $32 billion industry. It is right under drugs. It is a global issue. It is a national issue. We heard some great statistics about Florida from Mayor Seiler. Unfortunately, Florida is number 3 in the United States for human trafficking. So this is a local, issue, also. So it's something that I am very, passionate about. That's why I decided to do this. Our group here, you can see there's quite diversity. This is the first time that we had men on a Freedom Challenge. Usually it's women climbing for women and children. But this was a corporate climb. So you can see we had 8 gentlemen. We had ages from 22, the oldest was 70. We had people from South Africa, India, Canada, and we actually had 6 from Florida. So Florida definitely was well represented on this climb. Little background on this climb. To do this, we needed to raise a minimum of $50,000, or if you were climbing as a husband and wife team like we had, it was $60,000. So I have to tell you, when I talk about being scared and feeling above my head and having a goal bigger than I was comfortable with, raising $50,000 was one of them. And then the other thing that we do, just so you know, is that we pay for our own expenses. So all the funds that we raise go to the cause of fighting human trafficking. We had different people with different backgrounds, and so that whole variety and diversity, of course, is just really really exciting. So I'm going to take you up this mountain, and as taking you up this mountain, I want to share some of the lessons that I learned, and that wasn't intentional, but as God often does, you take on something and you get more out of it than what you thought you were going to. So again, Kilimanjaro is in Tanzania, Africa. We started at 6,400 feet. Was our starting elevation. We were on the mountain 7 days, 6 nights. The other thing that we had that was totally amazing, you're going to see some pictures of them, we had 100 porters supporting us. So it was just amazing because, of course, we're in the middle of nowhere. So whether it's food, water, our equipment, our tents, just this team of porters that were just really amazing and behind us. So here we are at our first camp, which is 8,600 feet. And one of the things you're going to see as we go up, you're going to see really the climate change. You're going to see vegetation disappear. So that's how I know kind of where we were, is when I kind of really look at the climate. So we still have grass and trees here. And so we're getting ready to climb. So we went, this is at 8,600. Our next camp was at 11,150 feet. It was a place where our first climber got altitude sickness. And one of the things about this, altitude is a big challenge. About 1,000 people try to climb Kilimanjaro, on an annual basis. 100 get evacuated. 10 people die. So it is not, for the faint of heart to do this. And one of the things that our porters and guides did, and this is a term I want you to remember and take away with you. It's called pole pole, P-O-L-E, P-O-L-E. So it means, it's Swahili for slowly. And so from the first step that we took on this climb, our guides would tell us pole pole. And what they would do, they would actually force us to go slowly. So as we're going up this mountain, our bodies would adjust. But at this camp, we did have our first individual that got sick. Thankfully, she did recover from it. They were very conscientious about checking our blood oxygen level and how we were feeling and what we were eating and what we were drinking. But pole pole became a very familiar term that we heard. Here we are at 13,000 feet, which was really our third camp. And this was very critical camp because we actually spent 2 nights here. So you can see Kilimanjaro in the background. It was a beautiful night, the stars. You can see that we're, camping in tents. Our porters are doing all the cooking and the water purification. And you can also see that it's getting pretty barren here, less shrubs. So at 13,000 feet, we did something, and you probably, if you know anything about mountain climbing, you've heard this word, called acclimatization. So we spent 2 nights here. The first day that we were there, we went on an additional hike, went up about an hour further than 13,000 feet, came back down, spent the night. Then we got up, and that's when our second, at 13,000 feet is where our second climber got sick. He was sick on, when we got there. When we got up on day 4, he was still sick. They put him on an IV. And we went out for a hike. We went up to 14,875 feet, which is the highest that I had ever been at that time. And then we came back down. When we came back down, they had evacuated Tony. because he just wasn't, recovering from the altitude sickness. Thank goodness, when he got back down to a lower altitude, he ended up being, fine. But of those of you who have gone snow skiing, now I don't know my elevations in Canada as well as I do in the United States, but I can tell you in the United States, the top of most ski resorts, the highest the lift's going to take you is 12,000 feet. So, we're already, here at, 13,000 feet. So we get up on day 4, and in fact, this picture here was really taken as one of our acclimatization hikes, and you can see it was interesting too. The view of Kilimanjaro changed as we actually were, we're really approaching this. And here we are heading towards our next camp, which was going to be 15,000 feet. And this camp was called Kibo. And, this is kind of what every day was like. Here you see us, walking in a line. And, of course, our porters, the interesting thing, I wish I had more pictures really of them. They would carry these big things on their heads and water above 13,000 feet. There's no water sources, so they carried the water from 13,000 feet to 15,000 feet in 5-gallon buckets, like on their heads, and they would relay this back and forth. I mean, it is an amazing. In fact, from a business perspective, the whole logistics and how they organized and how they coordinated it, and even how they figured out how much food for all of us, it really is just an amazing undertaking. So here we are headed for Kibo, 15,000 feet. One of the things, here's a picture of some of the porters. What they would do when we entered every camp, they would sing to us. They would celebrate, and just really encourage us, along this climb. Just wonderful people. So here they are, really singing to us. I want to introduce you to someone that became very special to me, and I have a story to tell you about this man. His name is Tito, and Tito was going to be my guide that I was assigned to me on the summit night. So, of course, they're with us through this whole journey, and so here's just Tito sitting on the side. And you know what? I want you to look at his, really his clothing and his boots and things like that. It's amazing. They're very humble. Very humble people. Of course, I'm going to tell you, my team, we had the best in equipment and boots and backpacks and et cetera. And of course, here's the thing too about them though. Gosh, they do awesome in this altitude. It's like it's no effort for them whatsoever. So we get to 15,000 feet, Kibo. We get in there around lunchtime. They tell us, have lunch, start getting your stuff packed, because we're going to get you up, and then try to get some sleep in the afternoon, because we're going to get you up at 10:30 at night, and we are going to hit the trail at 11:30. Now, let me back up and just tell you, because I talked about anxiety, I talk about doubt, I talk about fear, and I talked about the people who got sick. Every night I would be in my tent, and I'd be going, boy, what's going to happen tomorrow? That whole uncertainty, that unknown, not knowing what to expect. And, hey, business is sometimes like that also, right? We don't know what the economy is going to do. We don't know what our competition is doing. We don't know what's happening in our industry. And so that constant uncertainty, fear, doubt, what's tomorrow going to hold? Well, it was the highest at 15,000 feet before we got ready for this climb. So here's a picture of us. It is 11:30 at night. We can see that we have our headlamps on. You can also see we've got a lot of clothes on. It is definitely very, very cold at this, at this point. In fact, I'm going to tell you how cold it is. I have what's called a camel black. It's like a bladder that goes in your backpack. I had it wrapped in a flannel coat to try to keep it insulated. I had an insulated tube. Within an hour or so into that climb, that water, actually had frozen. So I actually had 2 Nalgene bottles, in my side packs. I stopped at one point to drink some water, and there's ice floating on the top of my, water bottles. I had on 3 layers on top and bottom. So it is quite a challenging, challenging experience, and it is just flat out, scary. So we start off at 11:30 at night. Every one of us have been assigned somebody that's going to be with us, no matter what. Of course, they had some extra porters. The majority of the porters and guides actually stay at that Kibo because they know we're going to be coming back down. So we start off as a group. So now there's 19 of us. One of the gals decided to turn around about 2 hours into the hike. She's just like, this is too much. And so when we start off together, pretty soon, at some point, you find yourself, separated. And so it's you and your guide. It is dark. It is steep. You cannot breathe very well because there's just not much not much oxygen, and you're just really it's very. I'm going to tell you how steep it is. When we would stop, I would wish Tito was behind me because I had that whole sensation of, falling, backwards. And the other thing that I remember of that night is just looking at Tito's boots and, my boots, because again, very, very, very difficult to breathe, very hard. You definitely start asking yourself, man, what am I doing here? And about 4:30 in the morning, I am feeling pretty whiny, just to be honest. I'm really, really struggling. I've been out there now for quite a few hours. It's just Tito and I, and the thing that kept me going, two things. One, Tito kept telling me, we're moving, and I think that he was saying that because I was going so slow. Maybe he doubted that I was actually making any progress, because you barely take, one step and stop because it's just so hard to breathe. And then, what? The other thing that just kept me going too was the women and children that we were climbing for. I mean, it's that cause, it's that purpose, it's that goal, why we're here. And I would just take, one more step, and I would say, in my head, because, part of this is mental. I mean, this is definitely, it is physical, but it is also mental. And I would just say, one more step represents one more woman, represents one more, child that we can free, from human trafficking. And so I just kept taking, one more step. At some point, also, I tell Tito, because when you get closer, Kilimanjaro is a volcano. When you get closer to the rim, you actually do what's called scrambling. You're using your hands. You're going over these boulders. And I tell Tito, I'm going, are you sure we're going the right way? I mean, because again, I'm really struggling. This is hard. And I laugh at that now. To question him because it didn't seem like we were on a trail, and in some aspects, we're not, because we're going over, these boulders. So at 5:30 in the morning, we reach the rim, okay? And the sun is coming up, and it is, of course, just this gorgeous view. The first place that you come to on the rim, it's called Gilman's Point. We are at 18,600 feet. And so we're not at the top yet, but at least we're on the rim. You can see it just was gorgeous. You can also see the snow and glaciers. In fact, here's another picture of one of the glaciers when we reach the rim. They're huge. They're just huge. And but at least I'm at the rim, and it took us 2 more hours before I actually did reach the summit. I want to show you this picture here that I got from Google Earth. I got this after I got back from this climb, because you know what I say? If I had looked at this picture before I went on this climb, I'm not for sure I would have gone on this climb. But if you'll look, down here is where Kibo is. That's the 15,000. You can see this red line here. Here is Gilman's Point. That's 18,600. Can you see how steep that is? I mean, it's insanely steep. And then, of course, from Gilman's Point, they have this like Stella Point, which has another sign. You can see we're going around here. You can see we're still climbing, but it's a heck of a lot less crazy than what we had done, before. But Huru Peak is really the summit. That's where we're headed. And here I am at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, 19,341 feet. That took me 8 hours to get there. And you can see I've got my American National Bank sign. Because one of the things I want to tell you, my bank was hugely supportive of me. We're a family-owned bank. My owner, my directors, my customers, you look, people in the Execs Association, people in the community, because with their help, I talk about, again, a team. Yes, I am standing up there, and I get to take my picture up there, but I did not get there alone because there were so many people that supported me. I personally raised $63,000 and towards this climb. Thank you. And this cause, the 20 of us, we raised $800,000, 20 people. I mean, that is just a mind-boggling number to me, but also, just that, when people put their minds together, when they have a common cause, when you've got, alignment, within our organizations and our businesses, the things that we can accomplish, together, the sky's really, the limit. It's having that dream, it's having that purpose. So I'm up there, I'm celebrating, I'm taking, my pictures, and then I realize I got to get down. And it is quite challenging going down. It's very hard on your knees. It's, very hard on your legs. You know what? I have to give a shout out to somebody in the Execs Association that's here. She is the owner of Back to Health. She is my physical therapist, and I'm going to tell you, she is the one that keeps me climbing mountains. So if you and she's going to be speaking tomorrow. So just thank you, Darlene, for all you've done, and because it is definitely a physical undertaking. So we start back down. It takes us about 4 hours to get back down. By the time we get down to Kibo, I'm not feeling too well. I'm going to tell you, boy, I'm shaking, and of course, what I didn't know until later is because there were some people who were there before me. There were people who got there, after me. We had some people that really had to have porters on each side to help them, get back down. Because the altitude just really does a number, on you. And we had one gal at Kibo that had to be put on oxygen, and they ended up taking her in a cart to take her down to the next level. But so we get back down to Kibo. We get a short break, and then we have 6 more miles to go down to 12,000 feet. And I have to tell you all, it's the longest 6 miles of my life. I mean, it was, and that took another, 4 hours. So I hiked. Now, I'm not talking about how long I was awake. I'm just talking about literal hiking, 16 hours, that day. And I tell you what, I wanted to cry. And the thing is, though, you don't have a choice, though. It's not like you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm bailing, come get me. You can see there's just nothing. You've got to walk. I look at this and I say, hey, this is like must be what the Israelites felt like, in the wilderness, because it's just like nothing out there. And I kept thinking, oh man, over the next horizon, we're going to find the camp, and the camp, wasn't there, and it just was a long. You can see it's dry and dusty, and now the weather's a lot warmer as you get back down. So I do get out of the camp. I'm laying in my tent that night, and I'm going, this was insane. This was the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. I'm never going to do anything like this again. What was I thinking? And I'm laying there thinking, I've got 12 miles to go the next day. And I'm exhausted. I mean, I'm totally at the end of myself, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so that was thinking about the next day was definitely it was a tough a tough time. Now thank goodness I woke up and actually felt okay. And yes, 12 miles. It was a long day. It took us about 7 to 8 hours. But you know what? I did survive. And of course, so this was in 2015, and I have done 3 hikes since then. So that wasn't my last hike, and part of it is is because of the cause. In fact, I just got back from Peru with 35 other women. We did the Salcante Trail and did a 15,000-foot, pass, 5 days, 4 nights, on that mountain. Ended up in Machu Picchu, hiked Machu Picchu. So that was my most recent one the 2 weeks ago. So here are our porters, and they, this is when we're back where the vans are going to pick us up, and they're singing to us, and we had a champagne toast, and it just was an exciting time. And so it was a trip of a lifetime, hardest thing I've ever done. And now I just want to share with you some of the lessons for life and business, that I learned. So one of them, I talked about team. And I think this is not a new concept, but I just really want to, reinforce that as a team. And you know what? In the Execs Association, right? And the International, Execs Association, that we're part of a team. We're part of a team of supporting each other and building each other's, business. We've got our team as far as our coworkers. We've got vendors. We've got our customers. All those really people are, they're team. They're part of the team, helping us achieve our goals, right? As business people, helping us to climb, that mountain. So I have a saying I got from John Maxwell, none of us are as smart as all of us. And so I just think that collective, effort, depending on each other. You heard Dennis even talk about just what happened here with the hurricane. We need each other. We need each other. And so we're going to be able to climb higher and farther, with each other than we are alone. I mentioned to you that whole have a goal, a passion. I feel probably pretty sure that all of us as business people have something that we're trying to achieve. And so, I just want to say, don't lose track of that goal, that purpose that you've set for your business. So no matter if it's dark and you've got fear and you've got anxiety and you feel, overwhelmed, it's what, like Tito, told me, you're moving. Even when you feel like you're not making the progress that you would like to be making, if you take one more step, I told you about that thing of taking one more step, just one more step. And so when you're discouraged and it doesn't seem like things are going, your way, just that one more step just keeps us moving to what we want to accomplish, with our businesses and our organization. I told you my Swahili saying, pole pole. I'm willing to bet that the people sitting in this room, if you're members of an exec association, you're probably a type A. You're probably a go-getter. You probably want to achieve some things. And that's awesome. But sometimes we need to slow down. And sometimes, because, here's the thing about climbing Kilimanjaro. You have to give your body time to adjust to the altitude. And so you've got to have some, patience, because you cannot go from the bottom of Mount Kilimanjaro to the top. Maybe the porters can, but I'm going to tell you, normal people like us are not going to be able to do that. So that whole thing of pacing ourselves and adjusting as the climate. I talked about the climate. I talked about the environment. Adjusting our businesses, accordingly, so that we don't burn out, so that we don't get discouraged, so we don't feel in that house. So remember that. Hey, remember, you've got a Swahili term now. Pole, pole, slowly. You know what? Taking risk as business people. Yes, we're taking risk. Climbing this mountain, raising this money. It was a risk, and there was an uncertainty, and there's no sure things. And so we've got to get out on the skinny branches and push ourselves, have those goals that maybe seem really, big for us, that really scare us, because if we don't take risk, we're probably not going to be able to accomplish everything that we would like to, in our businesses. The other thing, talked about acclimatization. It kind of goes back to this whole pole. Yeah, we would really like to, just take off and let's go to the top of the summit. But as we learned, sometimes you have to go up and then come back down to where you are to be able to go up higher the next day. And so sometimes in our businesses, maybe we say, man, my goodness, I thought I was making more progress, and now I find myself back to where I started from. And you know what? I thought I would be further along. Or maybe it's a lateral move. Maybe instead of going up, you found yourself going a little bit sideways. But here's what we really learned. It's part of the preparation, sometimes to go up, come back down, then go up, further. So the same thing, with our businesses, of giving ourselves that look. I bet I know this about you two in this room. You're probably your own worst critic. You're probably tougher on yourself than than anybody else. And so just take a look and keep things in perspective. That maybe what you're going through, maybe the challenge, maybe the setback, maybe you've lost some ground in your industry or with your business. It might be exactly what you need to really go further and do better than you've ever done. Tito. Having a Tito in your life. If I had not had Tito, I would not have known the way. So having someone in your life, in your business, that has been where you want to go, that knows, the way. Again, I was questioning him. I'm going, what? Are we on the trail? Well, yeah, he knew he was on the trail because he's done this. He's done this. So whether it's a consultant, whether it's an executive coach, whether it's a mentor, an advocate, maybe it's it's the training, that development. Having a Tito that's going to really help you take your business where you want to go, and then more importantly is being a Tito. Who are you mentoring in your company or in your industry or in your own, association, whatever association? Are you helping somebody else, on this journey? Because I know a lot of people have helped me, and that's one of the things that I want to do. I want to make sure that I, actually help them, also. And then the final point is like not comparing ourselves to others. And I think, we're competitive and we want to succeed and we want to be successful. But comparison is really the thief of happiness, because, we start looking at somebody else and how they're doing. And then all of a sudden, we're measuring, ourselves maybe with not the right standard. And because on this mountain, it didn't really matter who got there first. It didn't matter who got there last. The two people who did not even get that opportunity to stand on the summit, they still contributed to that $800,000. They still took the risk. They still succeeded, even though they never stood there. So this whole thing of just really, comparison is just a waste of, really a waste of energy. So my motto after experiencing this is, and the thing I want to leave you with, and just want for you to take away, and I just want to encourage you to keep climbing, keep pursuing that goal. Don't give up, don't get discouraged, don't quit, don't doubt. Just keep climbing, and take others with you. Thank you very much. I'll answer. Do I have time for a couple of questions, if anybody has any? Thanks. Yes, sir. And thank you for those smiles you were giving me out there. Where are you from?
Great story. From Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, thank you.
So obviously you must have prepared before this trip a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your training regimen before you left to go on the trip.
And being at sea level here in Florida, that's a great question. So one of the things that really we did, we walk in the sand, on the beach, with boots, backpack, whatever, because that sand does make things a little bit more challenging. We have a landfill out in West Broward that was converted into a park. And, after they let it set and make sure it wasn't toxic and all that, that's called Vista View. I have affectionately named it Mount Trashmore. And so I trained a lot on, Mount Trashmore. Now, some of the other people from here in Florida did stairs, I'd rather be outside than inside. But one of the things to do, and look, at the time I did this, I was 57 years old. I'm a normal person. It is one of those things of having that training schedule, that whole consistency, having a goal, doing a little bit, a little bit at a time. So I just spent hours, lots of hours walking, and thank goodness I had training partners that were with me. I went to Colorado, a couple of times to try to be, be in the altitude, but it was basically just lots of walking. Yes, Andy.
Question, Ginger, but how long did it take for you to prepare from the start until you said, "I am doing this," until you were able to achieve your goal? What was the time period? If you were saying to somebody, "You want to do this? This is how much time you need." What would you recommend?
I think that probably 6 months, 3 to 6 months is definitely. Now, I did not do that because I tell you what happened. My first freedom climb that I did was in Colorado in 2014. I, with 60 other women, we did 7 peaks higher than 14,000 feet in 4 days, all right? And so that was in July of 2014, so I had that base. I wasn't going to do Kilimanjaro because I was like, the whole fundraising scared me more than the mountain. I said, hey, I'll write a check to somebody else, but I'm not going to go. And so they kept asking me, and I kept saying no. I said yes, Andy, at the end of November. And so I trained, we were in Tanzania at the end of February. So I basically did it in 3 months. I mean, I did have a little bit of a base. I know some of the gals that went to Machu Picchu that did really well. They did 6 months worth of, really training. But it kind of depends. It's individual. It's like, where are you? Are you going from the couch? Or are you... Or are you used to walking a couple of miles? Because one of the things that a lot of these climbs, I mean, you need to be able to walk 6 or 8, miles. Part of it's just being on your, feet. This is an endurance. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you about Kilimanjaro. One of the climbers that got the sickest was an Ironman, and so like sometimes that excellent, fitness kind of works, can work against you because. That's what happened to you, Seth. Yeah? And I don't know if it's an overconfidence, and therefore they push themselves a little bit, harder. And this altitude, the thing about altitude, boy, it is an equalizer because yes, you need to be physically fit, but you can be in the best shape like this Ironman participant. And man, he was sick. So great question. Yes, sir.
I'm assuming you hiked at night because daytime would be hot. How hot did it get?
Well, because of the altitude we were at, that was not something we had to worry about, was the heat. Now, there are some places that you do, because of lightning and whatever, some hikes that you want to get up to the summit and then back down before the weather changes. But now remember my math here, 16 hours. It was a 16-hour day hiking. So part of it is just the fact it takes so long. So if we had not started that early, man, we would have been in the dark on the other end. One thing too, sometimes about being in the dark, maybe it's kind of a good thing because boy, then you really couldn't see. You could feel how hard it was, but at least I couldn't see. And here's the other thing too. There are definitely parts of the night, man, that are fuzzy. I mean, because the whole altitude, it does make you like not really have that whole clarity of thought. In fact, when I reflect on it, one of the things I think by the time I got back down to 15,000 feet that I was so weak and shaky is I probably wasn't eating and drinking enough because I wasn't thinking, about it. I mean, and that really, you do have to continue putting, really fuel in. But that's why we do it. It's just because it's so, so long. Yes?
On the other side, so $800,000, what does that do?
Okay, thank you for that question. The money goes, Operation Mobilization is, quote, the parent company. It's a 55-year-old faith-based, ministry that's global. And under that, they have what's called the Freedom Challenge projects that are specifically for, human trafficking. There are 50 projects in 30 different countries, and within those 4 projects, they do 4 things: education. You know, in a lot of these countries, women are not allowed to get an education. So therefore, because they can't get an education, you know, then there's this whole poverty issue. So a lot of this is around, not having job skills. So we've got the education part. We've got development where, like like for instance, buying sewing machines and teaching these women how to sew, or even buying an ox where they get the milk, to feed their family, they get to sell the milk. So there's different development programs. The other one is rescue and rehabilitation. So in some countries, the projects are actually rescuing women and children out of and then rehabilitating them. And then the fourth one is really prevention, because part of this is really educating the different countries, because there's a lot of deception and manipulation. So I'll give an example: Moldova. Moldova is a country that has the highest unemployment in the world. And so they have what's called social orphans. So the parents have left the country, left the kids alone because they're trying to go get work, somewhere else. So somebody comes along and says, to a young, in fact, the average age is 12, all right, which is just hard, so hard to believe. But they'll come along and they'll say, hey, I can get you a job in a retail store, or I can get you a job as a housekeeper, and come with me. Well, what happens? They go. They think that's what's going to happen, and they take their passport away, and then they're actually trapped. So that whole thing of really trying to prevent it. My daughter actually visited a project down in Costa Rica a couple of years ago, and they were teaching the women there how to make sandals, and so that they could sell the sandals. So, India is a country where women, man, they have less value than a dog. I mean, they really do. So some of this is cultural, and so one of the local churches here in Boca, they have built a school. I mean, they funneled all their fundraising to the school. So again, 50 different projects. They look different in 30 different countries across the globe. And look, ladies out there, I'm always recruiting climbers for future climbs. I have to just tell you a quick story, then I'll get your question. So when I was in Peru, I was thinking to myself, all right, I've done 5 of these climbs now. Maybe I'm going to take 2018 off. And what happened? We had 3 young girls that really are leading a project. So they were on this climb, but they're actually, doing this work, and they were telling, about their projects and what they were accomplishing. And one of these girls actually was a former victim at 12 years old. In fact, in the country of Moldova, she had gotten out, had gone to college, and she has chosen to go back and actually work, in a project with these girls to keep happening to them what happened to her. And so I heard these stories, and I was like, okay, the need's too great. I cannot quit climbing and quit fighting for this cause. So I'm looking for other women to join me on this team that I had in Peru. I was leading a team of 12 women. 8 of them were first timers, 4 from South Africa, 4 from Canada, so Canada ladies, okay? And then 1 from Brazil and 3 from Florida. So there was a question here that I didn't give you a chance to answer.
And so my question is, given sort of your vantage point of having worked in this for years, what do you say to the people who aren't going to climb the mountains about what they can do?
You know what, and thank you for just really emphasizing that point, that it's not happening, somewhere else. It's not somebody else's, problem. You know what, so those of you that are visiting South Florida, you can see we've got a wonderful place to live and work, and yet I've already told you that Florida's number 3, in the nation, so, it is here. So one of the things, it's why I do what I'm doing, right here. So I had two objectives. One, I wanted to inspire you in your business and in your personal life. But then I also wanted to use this as an opportunity, for awareness. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you locally. We've got several of our universities, Nova, Florida Atlantic, Bear University that are actually having different initiatives to raise awareness. One of and of course I've been asked to be on one of these boards, and of course I'm going to say yes, because this is one of my passions. So the universities are getting involved. We do have here locally some agencies that we have the Broward County Human Trafficking Coalition, and so they actually go out and speak and are trying to educate people. One of the things you were talking about that we all can do, and that is just like when something doesn't look right, when something doesn't feel right. I mean, when we had a situation here in Boca Raton, which is really kind of like supposed to be the the posh high end part of South Broward, South Florida, and gated community, and they really had some girls that were really being held captive, and the neighbor was like, man, how come I never see these kids out? And of course it was this whole thing, oh, they're being homeschooled, et cetera, et cetera, and something just didn't really add up, and they actually made a phone call. It got it investigated. So part of it's just when it's the same thing. Here's the other thing that's happening that's really, really good. Industries, the hotels, airlines, they're training their people how to look for signs. You know what? You see a younger person with an older type guy, and he seems to be a little bit more controlling and whatever. It's just when things don't seem right. And then we actually here in Florida and in the United States, we do have programs where they're actually trying to rehabilitate, help these girls get really heal from this. So, but it is it's unfortunate that in banking, for years we had to worry about money laundering and drugs. Human trafficking now is one of those things that because $32 billion, and it's a human being is reusable. It's not like drugs. So I probably if you could maybe find in your local area or wherever you all are from, I guarantee you there's probably something somewhere, but we don't think about it. And we don't think, we are like, oh. And so that is just part of why I appreciate this opportunity to speak and share about this. Anything else? And I don't want to. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.